No. So let's make sure you have a link to this, but this is live all around the world. And I sent an invitation to Homework, so they might be watching this, so they might jump on. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to our special event today. We are lucky to have not one, but two Jesuit priests. So I guess, Father, now we can say there are two Jesuits in Nevada. At this moment, there are two Jesuits in Nevada. So that's almost a historic thing, right? So Father Max is going to be talking, as he does every 8 weeks, about honesty. But last night I had the good fortune of having a very nice dinner with another Jesuit, Father John, who is from India. So I asked him if he wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the history of the Jesuits in India. I mentioned to everybody this morning that Father John is getting his PhD in electrical engineering at Santa Clara. What I didn't say is that Santa Clara is ranked the number 13 electrical engineering school in the country. And Stanford is what number?
Stanford is 22.
22. So that tells you something.
So it's higher than Stanford?
Correct. Good math. Good math. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a big day, and then we're going to have our Thanksgiving lunch. So please focus on this. This is this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for all of us. Well, it's actually my second time getting to listen to and speak with a Jesuit from India. And I think there are more Jesuits in India than anywhere else, right, Father?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And there are more Jesuit universities in India than anywhere else in the world. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Father John, and he's going to talk for a short period of time. And then Father Max will come up and talk about honesty. And I think Father John will probably leave some time for questions. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Welcome, Father.
Thank you. So very good morning.
Good morning.
I'm very happy to be here. I'm proud of this institute, and I feel at home here. Something similar that the Jesuits do in India. So can anyone guess what is the population of India?
Over a billion.
1 point?
I know it's over a billion.
Billion, yeah, 1.2 billion. And the Catholics, about 2% of the whole population. But the Catholics run 70% of the educational institutions. 70%, the 2% population. So that's how we educate the people, poor people especially. And there are about 3,500 Jesuits. And I come from Xavier Institute of Engineering, Mahim. It is an engineering school. We teach information technology, computer, and also electronic and telecommunication. Whom do we educate? We mainly educate the slum children. Have you seen the film Slumdog Millionaire? Yeah. So our engineering school is at the edge of Asia's biggest slum. So we pick up the students, brilliant students, and we bring to our engineering school and bring them up so that one day we hope the slums will disappear and they will have a wonderful life. We have about 53 colleges, which includes business school, engineering school, arts and science school. And about 100,000 students study in our schools. By and large, in the city, we are very much appreciated for the work that we do, the educational institution work that we do in the cities. As the Jesuit motto stands, preparing men and women for others, that they would go out and do good to others. And also we have 4 C's, our principle, 4 C's. Anybody, any idea about 4 C's?
Commitment.
Very good. Commitment.
Communication.
competence, courage, conscience. Yeah? So these 4 C's we prepare students, and you are very aware of this. So they go out and they do a lot of good works. And in the villages, we mainly, our schools are located in the rural areas, the poor villages, and there, when we educate the poor students, we get into trouble, and we are accused of converting the Hindus into Christians. Not actually, it's not so actually, because the landlords do not want us to educate the poor children there, because then they stop working in their fields. So that is how we get into conflicts in the villages, and we are often accused of converting people, but actually we educate the poor and bring them up economically, socially, and also giving them right conscience, giving them good education, for which the poor people are very grateful. So thank you very much for listening to me, and I feel that we are also running such institutes for senior citizens in our college, and I feel very happy and proud, and I thank Edward for giving me this opportunity to share about what we do in India.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hindu is the native religion of India, correct?
Yes.
How did you become a Jesuit versus a Hindu?
Yeah. So basically, the Hinduism is a way of life, but there are many caste systems. Caste systems in Hinduism is a religion where all are not equal. There are high caste, low caste, so the people are not treated equally. So that's how the Jesuits step in to say, no, they are basically human beings, irrespective of what religion one follows. So that's how we make our presence. Yeah.
So you think it was your parents that got you into that? Or?
Yes. If you ask me, 4 generations ago, we were all Hindus. I was a Hindu.
Yeah.
4 generations ago. But then the missionaries taught us, give us faith. Therefore, many of our Catholics would say, we are culturally Hindus, but in faith, we are Catholics.
Right.
In faith, we are Catholics, but in culture, we are Hindus.
Good. No, sorry. We're going to do questions afterwards when we're outside with Father, because this will go all day.
Right.
And
Right.
You'll have plenty of time outside. But Father, we have a tradition. This is a book that all the students use to learn to memorize things, and they've all signed a copy for you.
Oh.
So we want to give you this copy, and then we'll get a picture taken with you at lunch outside.
Wonderfully, Edward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we'll move on. I think we should definitely take the opportunity at lunch, not only to talk to Father Max, but to see Father John outside, understand what they're doing in India and the challenges they have. You see that it's typical with the Jesuits. They're dealing with the people who need help the most, which is what our school tries to do here with education. So, as we do every 8 weeks, Father Max Oliva is here to talk about honesty, and everybody is prepared. And Father Max, if you would please come forward and.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So I've met some of you before.
Yep.
There are some familiar faces here. that okay?
Mm-hmm. Just move it a little bit closer. Yeah.
Okay. Am I on?
You're on.
Good. So I'm glad to be back. In the meantime, between the last time I was here and this time, I had kind of an interesting experience. I went on a leadership camp event up in Lee Canyon, which is near Mount Charleston, and we, with Judge Kearns' group, if any of you know Judge Kearns, and there were 57 participants, went 3 days. The temperature was 38 above, and there was snow in the ground. So we were all dressed warmly. And it was a learning experience for me. It was to help people who are in recovery to develop certain disciplines, to be concerned not only about themselves but about the total group. And so they had this thing where you get in a big circle, all 57. Some of you may have done this, and you do the number thing, you know, count one, and each person counts their number and comes around, and as soon as everybody is got it, which takes a couple of hours because people goof off, don't want to do it, are kidding around, whatever, and eventually the whole group gets angry at this one or two people who's keeping them standing out there in the cold, and eventually everybody, they all get it, and then they go on to the various activities. So anyway, that was yeah, I was out of my comfort zone, but it was a good experience. So what I want to do this morning is I want to take you on a journey back to childhood. Whatever your childhood was, wherever you are from, whatever your situation was economically, socially, and I want to take you, even though it might be difficult, there might be some difficult memories in the past, but somewhere in the past, somebody said, you know, honesty is a good thing. So what I want to do is I want to share my story, and then you can connect with yours in whatever way that's possible, and there'll be time for questions and everything. And this is helpful for me too, because every time I do this, I get new insights into my family. So I come from a family of, my dad was full-blooded Italian, grew up in North Beach, San Francisco. I wouldn't say middle class, maybe blue collar, that kind of. His father died when he was 4, so his mother had to raise 3 children. My mother, however, was from a fairly wealthy family in Marin County. Those of you know the Bay Area. It's across the Golden Gate Bridge. Before the Golden Gate Bridge was there, they used to take the boat across. And she was half Italian, half Irish, and her family was pretty well off. And so my father was hardworking, kind of grew up, you know, grew up in the same neighborhood as the DiMaggio brothers. You know, Joe being the most famous of the, all of them, yeah. So my dad was hardworking. He was very successful in business. He was a salesman. And my mother took care of the 5 children. I was the oldest. And she had a real heart for the poor. So whoever in our neighborhood or our parish or the city was in trouble or needed help, my mother was out there bringing whatever they needed to them. So I learned kind of responsibility from my father and compassion from my mother. But I also learned something else. I learned about honesty. And I learned it full force in high school when I got caught a couple of times in lies, in avoidance of doing, you know, what the rules were in the family. And that got me into trouble. And the trouble led to punishment. And punishment would be either, you know, taking away your allowance or not letting you drive the car or whatever it was. And so this is actually how I learned that honesty is the best policy for my own self-interest. It was better to be honest and have the activities that I wanted to do. Although, I mean, it's not that I was perfect in this, because I still, you know, when I could get away with something, I would. But my dad taught me, because he was really a good salesman, he said, what's really important about honesty is that it's connected to trust. So you can't really deal with somebody in business unless they're trustworthy. And I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense. The other thing was, he said, you know, when you're a salesperson, you want to sell your product, right? You want to make it as appealing as possible to your customer. But he said you have to be careful of exaggeration. If you exaggerate, that's a form of lying. If you exaggerate the importance of your product or the quality of your product, and you're caught, you're going to lose a customer. So, trust. I went to college, and I majored in business because I was going to go in with my father eventually. And I went to work for a food cannery in San Jose, California. I was a young guy. I was in my 20s, early 20s. And I had a territory, my own territory. I had Oregon, Washington, and Vancouver, which meant I had an expense account. An expense account meant that when I went on my trips, I would have the money from the company to, you know, stay in a nice hotel, get a rental car, go to nice restaurants. And because I was raised in this atmosphere of honesty, when I would come home from my trip and back to the office, I would sit down and I would itemize where I had had dinner, what hotel I had stayed at, and how much each of these things cost in the rental car. And then I would hand it in to the company treasurer. Well, one day, a couple of months after I started this, one of the older salesmen comes into my office, a guy who I looked up to because he was older than myself and successful. And he said, we have to talk. And I said, well, sure. What do you want to talk about? And he said, well, you are too honest. And I said, what do you mean I'm too honest? You're making us look bad, which meant he and the other salesmen, who were, as it turned out, padding their expense accounts. So they were adding, you know, money that they wanted from the company that actually wasn't theirs because they hadn't spent it, padding their expense account. So I'm at a crossroads here. This is an important moment for me, right? Because what do you want to do? You want to be accepted. You want to be one of the guys. You want to, you know, you want to be popular. And so I thought to myself, you know, in a brief moment, what am I going to do here? But because my parents had instilled in me this really strong virtue of honesty, and because I think I had, I guess, I found out I had a fair amount of courage. And so I said to the guy, well, look, I appreciate what you're saying, but, you know, this is the way I was raised, and basically I'm not changing. So then, of course, word gets around to the other salespeople, you know, this guy is going to which means they have to make the change, not me. They have to make the change. And so there was some tension for a while in the office, but eventually, you know, things died down, and I was doing a good job with my sales, and so I was accepted. But there was that period of time of uncertainty as to whether I would ever be accepted by these guys. So there is a risk when you're honest. The risk of losing friends. So then recently I thought to myself, in fact it was on that leadership camp when I was asked to give a talk on honesty to the participants, and I was thinking to myself, and I'd like to pose this question to you. And the question is, well, why do people lie? You know, why do we lie? Which is a form of dishonesty. That's, you know, there's other forms, stealing and cheating and stuff. But I'd like to know what you think. Why do you think we lie?
To get you something for free.
All right.
Insecurity.
Can you say something more about that?
Insecurity.
Insecurity. Okay. Okay. So good. That's good. Insecurity. Okay.
Get out of trouble.
Of course, yeah. But of course, if you get caught, you're in worse trouble. Yeah. Stay out of trouble. Okay. Yeah.
Just like the sales people that you had to deal with, it was just the way they did things.
Ah, the way you do things. Yes. Very good. Yeah. The culture. Yeah.
They don't have moral values, or they haven't learned them yet.
They didn't have the same opportunity that I had with my family. Yeah.
Try to take advantage of something they're not supposed to.
Right. Taking advantage of something. And somebody said greed.
Yeah.
Greed's definitely in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry?
To protect other lies that you've told in the past. Like you lied to protect another lie.
Lie upon lie. There's a, yeah, lie. Okay, all right. We have to break that at some point. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you lie to protect others' feelings.
But why do you do that?
That you're afraid that they might find out, you know, something you're hiding.
So when you say, or when I say, anybody says, I don't want to hurt their feelings. That's really saying something about yourself, because if your fear is, if I hurt their feelings, they'll reject me.
Right.
So it's back to yourself again. Yeah. Okay.
On this hurt, like if someone says, how do I look in this dress? And you really don't think they look good. You don't want to tell them they don't look good. You say, oh, you look beautiful in that dress.
Or you can say,
Protect their feelings.
or you can change the topic. Oh, look at that bird that just flew by. Actually, I have a story that's a kind of a little joke about this couple who are getting ready to go out to a formal kind of party, and the husband is, they're in the same kind of vanity area in their home, and the husband is putting on his tux, you know, and he's and his wife is behind him, and she's in front of a full-length mirror, and she's kind of looking at herself in the mirror, and she says, you know, honey, she says, since our last child, you know, my hips are a little bit bigger, my breasts seem to be sagging a little bit. What do you think? And he says, well, your eyesight is still good. Well, okay, so why do we lie? Well, there's the fear of rejection. There's to gain something for oneself, though in a deceitful way. It's a form of manipulation. You can manipulate people by lying. And as somebody said, to cover our tracks, which means, you know, to cover the lies of the past, you keep lying in order to you know, which is a house of cards, because eventually it collapses. Now the second question is, because this is also part of dishonesty, and that's, why do people steal? So what do you think about that? Why do people steal? Yeah.
Sometimes like entitlement. They feel like they deserve it when they don't.
Aha. Entitlement. That's good. That's a good one.
They can't resist the opportunity.
And why is that?
That's just the way they were raised. You know, if they don't see anybody's around, they just put it in their pocket.
It's an addiction. It's an addiction.
It can be an addiction. Exactly. Sure. Like shoplifting, for example.
Or it could be used to feed an addiction too. You know, like I'll use myself as an example. I was a heroin addict. In order to get my heroin, I had to go out and shoplift, get the money, and to sell the product that I stole. So, you know, you steal for money, you know, for whatever you need the money for.
Right. Okay. 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 Yeah.
Maybe they're hungry. Your parents out there shooting up heroin and ain't buying no food.
Yeah.
They got to go out there and fend for themselves.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I would think that the root of theft is covetousness.
Aha. Covetousness. Yeah, that's 2 of the 10 commandments are about covetousness. Yeah. Okay. Not coveting your neighbor's goods and not coveting your neighbor's wife.
Yeah.
Or husband. Okay. Good. Covetousness. Okay. Anyone else? Yes.
Some steal other people's ideas.
Ideas? Oh yeah. In fact, you can.
Credit's due.
That's right. The credit should be to the person who did whatever, invented the product or whatever it is, and then you take credit for their invention. Yeah, that happens a lot. Yeah. Okay. So stealing. So when I was thinking about this, I was thinking, yeah, because they think they can get away with it. That was one that came up. Another is greed, feed an addiction. I had that one, and it's really about myself. It's a self-centered kind of vice. So what might be some antidotes to dishonesty? Well, one of them, it seems to me, is the 12 steps. How many people here have done the 12 steps? Either AA or SA or drug addiction or whatever. The 12 steps. Okay, I'm going to read the 12 steps in terms of the topic of honesty. Okay. First of all, and by the way, the 12 steps is really about honesty to myself, to others, and to God as I know Him. All right, first step. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol or whatever, that our lives had become unmanageable. Okay, now that's honesty with myself. I mean, you know, that's coming to the, you know, to the last stop, whether it's drugs or alcohol. I finally have hit bottom, and I say to myself, you know, I need help. I'm powerless over this. That's honesty with self. Secondly, came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. Well, okay, that's a sense of honesty with not only myself, but that there's somebody greater than me that can help me get out of this mess that I'm in. Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. Okay, honesty with God. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of myself. Now that's really tough, because when you do that, you have to look at not just your strengths, but your weaknesses, and not just your qualities, but your vices. And that's difficult to do, and you need a lot of courage to do that, right? And you need somebody else to kind of help you deal with this, which is why you have a sponsor in AA. Honesty with myself. Number 5, admitted to God, to myself, and to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs. All right, now I've owned up to my part of this. That's honesty with myself. And now I'm going to share this with somebody else. All right, somebody I trust, and that's honesty outside myself. Seeking truth. Number 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. So this is honesty with myself so that I can be the person that God has created me to be, and not the person that I have been, you know, going in terms of the dishonest life. Made a list of all persons I had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So that's an exercise in honesty, because you have to write down, you know, the people that that your behavior has adversely affected, and then you have to, in the next step, make direct amends to such people whenever possible. Now, I know a guy who I know right now in my life, who is going through some of this stuff, and the trick is picking out, looking honestly at my life and saying, okay, who in my life have I adversely affected? Was it my parents? Was it my grandparents? Was it some teacher along the way? Was it a pastor? Was it one of my siblings? Who is it that I need to say, honestly, I'm sorry that I did what I did, and I'm in recovery, and this is what I'm part of the recovery process. And then number 10, continue to take personal inventory. That's that honesty with self. And when wrong, promptly admitting it. Again, that's part of the honesty. This is all about honesty. And finally, number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God as I understand Him, praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry it out. Well, His will is truth, and so the courage to carry out truth in my life, which means to be honest. So some ideas from the 12 steps. The second antidote to dishonesty, and eventually you'll get a copy of this, which Ed will, Sherry will make a copy for you. In the course of my life, I've been working since 2002 on a ministry of helping people in the business world in terms of ethics in the marketplace. And one of the people I met along the way, a speaker, was a fellow named Hank Shea. Hank Shea was a federal prosecutor in the Midwest, and he prosecuted white-collar crime and white-collar criminals. And after a while, after a couple of years of doing this, and listening to the rationalizations that came from people he was prosecuting, he came up with 10 lessons that he learned from white-collar criminals about how to live an ethical life, because they were very honest with him and shared with him, you know, what led them in the wrong direction, and as part of their making amends. So he came up with these 10 lessons, and they go from 10 to number 1. So let me read you these. Number 10, when faced with a right versus a wrong decision, so in anything, so let's say you're in a company and you're working in whatever capacity you're working, you're faced with all kinds of decisions, and some of them are really clear. You can say, oh yeah, I know what to do here, and some are kind of gray. You're not sure what to do with them. So when faced with a right versus a wrong decision, okay, guard against that first intentional misstep. Like, well, I'll just try this once. I'll just try this drug once. I'm an alcoholic, but I have been clean for a while, and I'll just try this. I'm going to have just one drink. I'm okay. I mean, I can handle it. But the problem is that there's the old slippery slope. You start here with a small thing, and gradually, you think, oh yeah, I'm okay, and then you're off in an ethical, not a good situation. So when faced with a right versus a wrong decision, guard against. Be alert. Be awake. Be prepared for that first intentional misstep. Lesson 9, and this will affect anybody who's going for a job. Never knowingly sign a false document. If you think there's something wrong with what you're being asked to sign, don't sign it. Get some advice on it from somebody else and find out, what the correct way to handle is. Number 8, and this goes to what this gentleman in the back said. Never compound or try to bury your mistakes. That's, a lie to cover a lie. Okay? Never compound or try to bury your mistakes. If you make a mistake, own up to it and deal with it with whoever is your supervisor. Number 7, do not follow directions from others you believe to be improper or unethical. Now, and there's a risk there because, you may be working for somebody who's not as ethical as you are. And there's stories about, there's a story about a woman who was a waitress, and she was asked by the boss to do some cleaning and using a liquid cleaning thing, which was dangerous, and it even said on the thing, it said, had that poison kind of mark on it, and she said, I can't do this, and so she told the boss, and he fired her. So sometimes you don't. Sometimes your honesty ends up, but you'll always get another job if you have the skills and the interest and the motivation. You'll get another job. Which brings me back to another person, a guy who I met, back in about 2003. I was living up in Canada, and he was a business fellow that I met, and we were talking about honesty and in the workplace, and he said, well, I want to tell you a little story about what happened to me in my first job after college. My wife and I, we'd married in college, we had a child, and I went to my first job, and he said about a month after I started, my supervisor said, now that you're here and you're working here now, I want you to know that every Friday evening we all go out with the boss to Hooters. And so the fellow who's telling me the story, who's a very strong Christian at the time, wasn't Catholic, said to himself, I can't go to Hooters. So he goes home, talks to his wife, explains the situation, says, there's a possibility that if I don't do this, I'm going to lose this job. And fortunately, he had a very strong, moral wife who said, don't worry, stand up for what you believe in, and God will take care of us. And so the next day he went in and he told his supervisor, this is against my religion, I can't do this, and got fired. But when I met him, he was the president of a company, so obviously he had, done well and stayed honest all the way through and was respected in his industry. So, do not follow directions from others you believe to be improper or unethical. Now, we'll look at that in a moment in terms of integrity. Number 6, no matter what your position in your organization, lead by example. Whether you're a street sweeper or a waitress or a janitor or somebody working at a fast food place or whether you're an executive, lead by example, because other people will be inspired by you and will help them, especially those who are kind of leaning a little bit towards the dark side. With your example, can really turn you around. Number 5, avoid the perils of willful blindness, which means, you know, I really don't want to know what's going on over here because then I might have to do something about it in terms of saying something or whatever, so I just turn my head and look the other way. Number 4, when faced with an ethical dilemma, seek advice and counsel from others. See, because, you know, we can get caught up in our own kind of self-interest, and it's helpful if we can kind of talk out to somebody else, you know, how to best deal with this particular situation. It also means there's a sense of humility here, you know, that I don't have all the answers, but I need help from somebody else. Number 3, learn to be satisfied with what you have legitimately earned. Greed is a vicious vice that can destroy you. Number 2, and somebody mentioned this earlier, no one is above the law. That's a core principle. No matter how powerful, wealthy, or famous one becomes, everyone is still subject to the same laws that govern us all and enable us to live in a civilized society. And you can see them in the last 5 or 6 years. We've had significant political figures implode, and because of moral lapses. And number 1, above all else, at all times, wherever you live or work, do 3 things: act with and foster integrity, exhibit and reward courage, and honor and protect your reputation and your organization's reputation. By the way, reputation is connected to all of this too, because if your reputation is that you're an honest person, people will deal with you. If your reputation is that you're questionable, people will question dealing with you. If your reputation is that you're immoral, people will avoid you. Now, any questions?
What was the second one there? You had integrity.
Act with and foster integrity, exhibit and reward courage, which is actually moral courage. Yeah.
Do you believe that it's possible for someone to live a moral life with a high level of personal integrity outside the confines or the structure of a religious authority or religious type of, you know, people typically go to religion for their moral compass? Do you believe that people do live?
Well, I have met people who've done it. When I look back on my childhood, right, so my parents had friends, and there was one family in particular who were car dealers. And there's an area where you can really gouge people, but they were very honest people and very successful and very connected to the community and very outgoing in terms of.
Because I know some, you know, about atheists, and
yeah,
they're some of the best people I know, and they're charitable and everything.
Sure.
I had another question concerning.
And by the way, atheists have to be ethical as well. You know, I remember one time giving a talk to some business people, and there was a guy there who came up to me at the coffee break and said, I just want you to know I'm an atheist. And I said, well, then you've got to be the most ethical atheist you can be. Oh, yeah, I got it now. I got it.
In your book, you reference, you know, wisdom teachings of other faiths and people. So being a Catholic or a Christian, do you believe that wisdom is something that's available to all people, regardless of the religious background that it comes from?
Sure, absolutely. Sure.
Do you think a lie is the same thing as a little white lie?
Well, the little white lie is just a smaller version of a lie.
But they do it to, like they say, they do it to protect someone's feelings or
Yes,
cover up something.
that's right. And so that's you don't want to go in that direction.
So it's basically the same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Sure. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, then. So yeah.
I do. I have one. Do
Yeah.
you believe that there's honesty and hypocrisy?
No.
No? Okay, then the next part of the question is that, and this comes from just the way that I see things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hypocrisy is really a form of lying because you're
Okay. Well,
stretching the truth.
Let me. Okay, because there's one way. Every group.
Well, by the way, we're all hypocrites.
That's pretty much that I was going to get at.
Yeah, we're all hypocrites.
Because whether you're in a religion.
Welcome to the human race. That's part of
At
being
one time, we
human.
everybody's done.
Well, because the way I see it, the religion.
But not all the time.
Religion is just like alcoholics, druggies, everything else. They reduce themselves to a small number, and the other people on the outside see the religious people as different. As we look at drug addicts and alcoholics, we see them, and they've reduced themselves to a small number. But then you have the other people that they're addicts, whether it be work, religion, school, drugs, alcohol, sex, anything. Addiction is rampant throughout everybody. But then the moral compass comes in, what is socially acceptable? But then those people are...
Well, not only socially acceptable, but also what's best for my health. Not only my physical health, but also my emotional, mental, and spiritual health. And that gets to the next little section, which is on integrity. So could you hold that for a minute? And welcome to being a hypocrite.
Thank you. I'm not. I love everybody.
I mean, not all the time, but I mean, occasionally we fall into that, yeah. So the chapter on integrity, I think that integrity and honesty are really intimately connected with each other. And I think that honesty actually depends a lot on integrity, because integrity means having a sense of self, all right, a sense of my worth, my self-worth, okay, which may have been battered over the years by life and by other people's opinions of me and whatever. So integrity presupposes having a sense of self. You got to have some self in order to, be a person of integrity. So let me take you again into my story before the coffee break. So I'm 24 years old now, not now, but then. 24, that would really be a lie.
Yeah.
24 years old, and I'm working at this cannery in San Jose, California, and the plan is that I'll work here for another couple of years, and then I'll go in with my dad, who had a food brokerage company in Los Angeles. But one day, in my office, sitting there, I had just come back from a trip from my territory, Oregon, Washington, Vancouver, and done my expense account thing. And I was sitting in my office, and into my head came this thought. And the thought was, I think I want to be a priest. I mean, out of nowhere. That was not my lifestyle. I was a bachelor. I had a full social life. I had the car of my dreams. I had a good job. I had lots of good prospects for the future. And so I just thought, wow, this is weird. What's this all about? And but eventually it became clear that this is, in fact, there was something to this. And so I went into what we call the novitiate, the Jesuit novitiate, which is the first 2 years of training as a Jesuit. But what I discovered in the first 6 months of being in the Jesuits was that in terms of this sense of self, that integrity presupposes a sense of self, that my sense of self was out of balance. And why? Well, I reflected on this. And what I saw was certain things, like, for example, I had guilt about past sins, right? Things I had done that were really against my conscience, but I had done them anyway. Okay, and when you do that, it kind of erodes your sense of self-worth and self-image. And the second thing was, and so my father was autocratic, and he had kind of like two sides to his personality. You know, he could be really friendly and fun to be with, and sense of humor, but he could slip into this other person that was sarcastic, put you down in front of your friends, not good, especially when you're in high school. And so I had this kind of a sense of inferiority that came from him. All right. But I didn't know all this because when I was working and everything, I was concentrating on making a living and stuff. I wasn't thinking about all this stuff. But now I'm in the Jesuits. I had to leave everything. So the car went to my dad, which was difficult. I love that car. The car went to my dad. All my possessions went to my dad, and I just went in with the clothes on my back into the novitiate. So then here I am. I'm sitting there in the first 6 months of this new experience, and all the things that I had put my worth in, the job, the car, possessions, quality of the women I went out with, all that kind of thing, that's all gone. So all of a sudden I'm faced with me, and I found I didn't really completely like me, and certainly I didn't love me. And so then I fortunately, there were some really good spiritual mentors there, and so I went to see one of them, and I said, I got this problem, which I'm beginning to realize that my self-worth is really out of whack, and I wonder if you could help me with this. And so he said, well, do you feel this all the time? And I said, no. At certain times I feel it, and sometimes it'll be somebody's behavior towards me, and I'll feel this way. So he said, I'm going to give you a phrase to say every time you feel uncomfortable with yourself for whatever reason. And let me tell you, the phrase, you won't. It'll be in your head for a while. You'll just say it, and then come to me and talk about it, and eventually you'll get to the point where your heart hears it as well. And I said, a phrase, and he said, okay, every time you feel down on yourself for whatever reason, just say this: God loves me and nothing else matters. That's all you have to say. God loves me and nothing else matters. And so I said, okay, I'll try it. I'll try anything. And so I started doing it, and every once in a while I'd feel this kind of uncomfortableness in myself, and then I would say the phrase, and gradually, over a period of time, like 6-8 months, took a while, one day, all of a sudden, the thing just kind of clicked. And I thought, yeah, okay, I not only think this, but I really feel this, that God must love me because he invited me into this ministry. So I began to see that, okay, this is where my integrity is. This is the core. When you hit the core of yourself, which AA does really well, when you hit the core of yourself, that's where your foundation is in yourself, and that's where you are able then to deal with a variety of things, like the fear of rejection. Like if I really believe deep down that God loves me and that's all that matters, then it doesn't really matter to me what somebody else thinks of me. I mean, I like to be liked, but I mean, if they don't like me because of some stand I've taken for the truth, well, that's their problem, not mine. But when you get to that point, you're really strong in your own inner core. And that's where integrity is. It's in that inner core. It enables me to face my fears of making a mistake. So we all make mistakes. This is part of life. But making a mistake in the terms of God is for me, was I found, you know, the mercy of God and the unconditional love of God, and so I got over the fact of, well, I'm going to make mistakes, I'm going to fail, it's part of being human, but I'm not going to get depressed over it. I'll just, you know, deal with it and move on. This sense of core, the core, enables me then to do that personal moral inventory in the 12 steps, right? I can do that because even though stuff will come up that's not really stuff I like about myself, as well as stuff that I do like about myself, but I can deal with it because of God's unconditional and merciful love. And also, when I am in that core of my own inner truth, which is, of course, then leads to all the virtues, including honesty, I can deal with the mundane ordinariness of life, which it seems to me leads some people to drugs because you get bored by life, or you're overwhelmed by life and you need something to take you into another realm of getting high. And I have one of my brothers has dealt with this. Dealing with the ordinariness of life. You know, sometimes life is really good and you've got really good things going and you really feel good about, and then sometimes things are difficult and you're struggling. And then there's that middle space of ordinariness that is most of our life, where you just go about life and do what you need to do, go to work, go to school, raise a family, whatever it is. That inner core is also what gives me moral courage, the courage of my convictions, that I can live out what I really believe, regardless of possibility of personal cost, which people do in various ways, even to the point of losing their life. And people who are for example, in the Middle East right now, there are many people who are saying to ISIS, no, I'm not converting. And they're dying for it, right? Well, those people have a really strong inner core to be able to do that, right? The more I have this sense of the inner core, the more I have the moral courage, the better I am able to say no to anything or anyone who wishes to harm me. Anything being a drug or liquor or gambling or whatever it is, which in themselves are okay, but it's a moderation. I mean, liquor's okay as long as you don't get drunk every night. So this sense of inner core enables me to say no to anything or anyone. Old friends. Let's say I've been in jail because of drugs, and now I'm out, and now where am I going to go now? Well, a lot of people go back to where they were before, which is back to the old neighborhood or the old friends, and then bang, you're right back into the whole thing all over again. So to be able to say no to that, I've got to get a new life, I've got to get new friends, I've got to get out of that situation. Great movie, Blindside. The movie Blindside, has anybody seen that? About the football player? Yeah, great story. Yeah, great story. And finally, it seems to me that this inner core that leads to moral courage helps me to face whatever addiction I have, and gives me the humility to get the help I need to overcome it, whatever it is. So, integrity means wholeness. You have a sense of wholeness, of completeness. You're being authentic. And what it really leads to, which is the ultimate really good thing about this, is it leads to self-respect. That you respect yourself. And when you're at that point, you're in really good space and a really good situation for living your life. Self-respect. And as Judge Kearns said one time to me, once you get to that point, once you get to the point of self-respect, then you can help others deal with whatever their issue is. But you can't do that before you get to this, because otherwise you're going to end up, the two of you, going off. But once I get to that point of my inner core being at peace with myself, that sense of wholeness and completeness, then I can help others deal with their addiction or vice or whatever it is. Well, think about this during the coffee break, and we'll come back in how long?
10 minutes.
Okay.
And after. Okay.
Thanks. Thank you, sir. Sure.
Whatever happened. No.
Great, good job.
I'm going to turn this off.
Thanks.
For a 10-minute break.
Yes.